Good morning, ITR. Today is 25th July. I'm Madhushmita Saho presenting you today's headlines. After HC order, Gehlot stages Dharna for assembly session. MLAs stage 5 hour sit on Raj Bhavan laws as governor stalls decision. Chennai records over 6,000 cases for the second day. Cases cross 13 lakh mark, daily deaths are over 750. Most deaths due to comorbidities in Chennai, Minister. Saibal criticizes Rajasthan governor. Shekhawat should go chase Congress. 30-year-old gets first shot of Covaxin. UP kidnap case, 11 policemen suspended. IPL to be held in UAE from September 19 to November 8. Farmer dies in custody of forest personnel. Rights panel seeks report. DMK MLA demands suspension of official. Editorial: staying away from political thickets. Even under a sovereign constitution, parliamentary and legislative supremacy in their areas of working must be respected. Former Rajasthan Deputy Chief Minister Sachin Pilot's rebellion against Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot has crash landed in the Rajasthan High Court and the Supreme Court of India. Upon Mr. Pilot's invitation in Rajasthan and Rajasthan Assembly Speaker C.P. Joshi's appeal to the Supreme Court, today's judges seem to have rushed in where their predecessors have feared to tread. There is constitutional history behind judicial reticence, which is normally expected in matters involving the working of parliament and legislatures. This history bears some a retelling of the past. Charles Badlaff was elected to England's parliament in 1880. He was an atheist and refused to take oath as a member of parliament in the name of God. The format of the parliamentary oath only provided for swearing in God's name. The Sergeant of Parliament, one Mr. Gossett, refused to sit Bradlaugh in Parliament without the oath in that form. Bradlaugh appealed to the courts. The court said they could do nothing. In Bradlaugh versus Gossett in 1884, a court held the decision of the House of Commons in resolving not to allow an elected member, Bradlaugh, to take the oath and the actions of the sergeant at arms in preventing Bradlaugh from entering the House were subject to the sole jurisdiction of the House. The last word: courts are apolitical, but getting pulled into political thickets, especially in matters of mass defection resulting in regime change. They must therefore be very chary of being turned into a third house of parliament or legislature. The walls of separation between constitutional organs, once breached, cannot be then repaired against future institutions. Even under a sovereign constitution, parliamentary and legislative supremacy in their spheres of functioning should be respected. The Supreme Court permitted the Rajasthan High Court to proceed to judgment on July 24, but directed that its orders would not be implemented as the Supreme Court itself proposed to rule on the larger question of the jurisdiction of courts to entertain such pleas. The Rajasthan High Court has thereafter decided to await the Supreme Court judgment and in the meanwhile injuncted the Speaker from proceeding further. The legal back and forth has in effect granted this insurgent faction precious time to consolidate their plans of regime change. Mr. Gehlot has now correctly called for an immediate summoning of the Rajasthan Assembly to prove his majority on the floor of the House. Political questions must be answered in political forums and not be confined to quibbling in courts. The court must be mindful of Portia's warning in The Merchant of Venice. 'Twill be recorded for a precedent, and many an error by the same example or will rush into the state. It cannot be. Sanjay Hedge is senior advocate, Supreme Court of India. The specter of crowds in the COVID city. Post pandemic habitations must resist retreating into a closeted isolation that only the privileged can afford. Distancing, isolation, and the thinning out of public spaces in Indian cities have offered up new pastoral landscapes of delight for urban dwellers with clean air, summer blooms, and assorted wildlife crossing streets. The quiet that overtook our cities during the lockdown was celebrated as a gift of the pandemic. Fuel saving, work from home arrangements, cost saving virtual meetings, and spare social gatherings are seen as offering new mellower possibilities of urban inhabitation that may save us from both COVID 19 and the ongoing climate crisis. Key attributes. Before we celebrate this oncoming new normal, it is important to recognize what it puts at stake. Agglomeration, density, and crowds have long been definitional attributes of the urban. Urbanization is premised on the scale economies that urban agglomeration affords. But the transformative social effects of urban density have also been long acknowledged. Cities as close knit, dynamic constellations of human and non human bodies offer ideal grounds for the spread of a virus, but also facilitate other diffusions. Urban mixings have helped dissolve or remake categories of caste and gender. They have enabled socio-economic mobility, widened horizons of possibility, and allowed historically discriminated groups of forge new identities, claim public resources, take risks, and assert rights. The unpredictability and possibility contained in motley urban communions make for the cityness of crowds. The pandemic has stigmatized social density, recalling Dickensian specters of overcrowding, contagion, and disorder. Social distancing has been readily embraced by India's caste society, which was always uncomfortable with the mingling forested by cities. Crowding in markets, mosques, or transport hubs were repeatedly highlighted as irresponsible and threatening to the health of the national body. As infection numbers rose steeply in Mumbai, Chennai, and Delhi by late April, COVID 19 hotspots mapped onto thickly populated zones of the cities, and congestion was singled out as a major culprit in disease spread. Slums, the problem zones of pandemic management, had drones hovering overhead to monitor compliance with stay at home orders. But in their congested lanes with 150 square feet houses, everyday activities of cooking, washing, and sleeping occur in spillover spaces outside the home. In these liminal spaces, exchanges of information, food, labor, contacts build a scaffolding of survival for marginalized urban society. Daily arbitrations with unfriendly and friendly bodies, strangers, migrants, stray dogs, and landlords create a matrix of relationships that transform a housing colony into a neighborhood. The months long nationwide lockdown of India cities has been spontaneous and repeated outbreaks of crowds, large and small, sparked by panic, hunger, anger, and by orchestrated celebration of national unity. This suggests an irrepressibility to the crowd in the city. Explaining crowding in India, three conditions stand out as common catalysts of crowding in the Indian city. First, scarcity. Chronic scarcity, often induced by lopsided resource distributions, induces a repertoire of techniques such as the jostle, the push, the rush to reach the counter before rations or tickets run out. Inhabiting the Indian city means learning to anticipate and participate in the crush of bodies pressing into trains and buses, clinging to their doorways as they speed along. Second, protest. The city in the staging ground for protesting crowds, bringing diverse discontents from far afield as in the Jallikattu protests of January 2017, when throngs of agrarian protesters congregated on Chennai's Marina Beach. Third, ritual or celebratory gatherings such as funerals and temple festivals regularly take over city streets, sidelining traffic for a public assertion of communal emotions. If scarcity protests and celebrations are catalyzing conditions for crowds, India's pandemic governance powerfully triggered each through its long and stringent lockdown. Scarcity induced panic buying. Crowds sprang up everywhere. In Tamil Nadu, Chennai's wholesale market complex, Coimbatore, emerged as the new COVID 19 flashpoint in May, sending trails of infection across the state through truckers, loaders, and vendors that converged there daily. City authorities had failed to anticipate and provide for the inevitable congregations at a large metropolitan market that generates livelihoods for a far-flung catchment of cultivators, traders, and manual workers. The pandemic has sharply exposed the fault lines of urban labor value chains, which valorize individualized work from home arrangements at the apex of the system while treating the mass of physical laboring bodies as problems to be contained and controlled. As cities slowly open up, perverted normal is unfolding, wherein private vehicles and taxis with limited occupancy are permitted. But safe mass transport arrangements, the economic and social lifeline of cities, are still a far cry. Our focus on urban agglomeration urges an imagination of post pandemic cities that resists retiring into a closeted isolation that only the privileged can afford. In Kerala, a tangled web of gold. The seizure of contraband gold from a diplomatic consignment in Kerala, Thiruvananthapuram, has come as a major embarrassment for the Kerala government. It has not only put the spotlight on gold smuggling in the state but has prompted the Center of Dispatch, the National Investigation Agency, report S. Anand and G. Anand. Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka see unabated rise in cases. Slight dip in incidence is minor relief to Kerala. Focus on care homes battling spread, testing charges kept in Karnataka. Governors are not protecting rule of law. Saibal. Congress accuses Kalraj Mishra of acting at the behest of the centre. Babri case, Advani records statement. Case filed due to political reasons. Senior BJP leader and former Deputy Prime Minister L.K. Advani recorded his statement before a special CBI court here on Friday in the Babri Masjid demolition case. Mr. Advani, who is accused of criminal conspiracy, recorded his statement through video conferencing for 4 hours and 30 minutes before special CBI judge S.K. Yadav. The veteran BJP leader was asked over 100 questions, said his lawyer K.K. Mishra. Mr. Advani denied the charges against him, and when asked by the court why then was a case lodged against him, said they were due to political reasons. Mr. Mishra told The Hindu. Mr. Mishra said the BJP leader did not deny his presence in Ayodhya on the day of the demolition. He said he arrived there for a Kar Seva which had been allowed by the Supreme Court. He, however, asserted that he had no role in the demolition, nor did he participate in any act that could impact the unity and integrity of the nation. With this, Mr. Advani became the 31st accused to record his statement against the evidence presented by the prosecution. His long-time colleague and former BJP President Murali Manohar Joshi recorded his statement on Thursday. Kalyan Singh, who was the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh when the mosque was demolished, and Uma Bharti, former Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister, too had recorded their statements recently. Another accused, Satish Pradhan, will record his statement on August 6 as he will unveil said Mr. Mishra. The court passed orders to attach the property of accused Om Prakash Pandey, who did not appear before the court despite repeated summons, said the lawyer. The special CBI court framed charges of criminal conspiracy in the demolition of the Babri Masjid in Ayodhya against Mr. Advani and several others, most of them linked to the Sangh Paribar. In 2017, the Mughal era mosque was razed to the ground by a frenzied mob of car sevaks on December 6, 1992. SC grants time to lawyers in Prashant Bhushan contempt case. Tarun Tejpal is also a respondent in decade-old litigation. Now coming to some world news. China asks US to shut Chengdu consulate. Erdogan joins thousands of pray at Hagia Sophia, prayers offered at reconverted mosque after nearly 90 years. Taliban says it is ready for talks with Kabul after ID holiday. US accuses Russia for testing weapon in space. Georgia governor, mayor fight over mask rules. Resolve issue via talks, judge tells them. India Sri Lanka seek to reset ties in the time of polls and pandemic. Panic as US jets fly near Iran plane over Syria. Coming to some business news, banks' gross NPAs may climb to as much as 14.7% by March, RBI. Apple company started sales of India made iPhone 11. RBI signs $400 MN currency swap facility for Sri Lanka. JSW Steel slips into red with 582 rupees crore Q1 loss. Hero MotoCorp to invest rupees 84 crore more in Ather. Airtel Africa net profit falls 57% in June quarter. Outlook uncertain due to pandemic. ITC's Q1 profit drops 25% to Rs 2,567 crore. CCD founders firm owed Rs 2,693 crore more to arms. Voda Idea, Bharti depend priority plans. Vodafone Idea and Bharti Airtel have vehemently defended their priority plans, which came under regulator TRAI's glare, and argued that the offers have not deteriorated the experience of other network users or violated any norms. Now, coming to some sports news. Broadcaster prompts an earlier start to the IPL. West Indies bowlers chip away. Stokes root fall cheaply as England makes slow progress. Anand and Giri play out a seeded draw. Udinese shock for Juventus. A come from behind win gives Lazio a CL spot. Humpy comfortable playing online, thrilled with overcoming her nemesis, Hou Yifan. Thank you and have a nice day.